So a week or so ago, or maybe a couple of weeks, OpenAI basically changed its terms and conditions to allow it to work with the military and for warfare. Now, and then it was announced a couple of days after that that they are now working with the US Pentagon uh, uh, for uh, military purposes, etc. So essentially, um, this is kind of worrying in terms of what OpenAI is doing here, because if you think about it, they've scraped a vast amount of publicly available data from across the world. And while it's said historically that its tech should not be used for harm, um, it doesn't mean that it can't be used for purposes that aid military and warfare. It's not doing harm by itself, but it doesn't mean that those who are using it are not necessarily conducting harm. It's just a natural extension for AI tools to be used for military purposes, for improving information accuracy analysis of situations, of data. Processing of data becomes much better, faster, and cheaper with AI tools. And so also availability of data is probably going to increase as these platforms collect more and more data from across the world. Now I was thinking about how such a situation of OpenAI working with the US military, working with the Pentagon, um, does India's data protection law protect us in any way against such usage? Can we perhaps complain to the Data Protection Authority about this? Um, Unfortunately, India's data protection law has an exemption for publicly available personal data. Its usage in surveillance, in training, and strategic planning, in micro targeting is possible. And anyone can scrape any publicly available personal data from the web, which means they can scrape it from social media. And while that data is protected by copyright, it's not protected by privacy. And quite often, the data sets that are being used to train AI are something that we don't know about really. There are, of course, military personnel that are publishing their data online. Sometimes location data might be linked to a particular profile. And so this is all information that can be used in some shape or form. Um, and there's nothing in India's data protection law that prevents OpenAI from using data gathered about Indian citizens from the open public web. Uh, so I mean, my contention with this has always been that there is privacy in public data as well. Just because we're disclosing it doesn't mean that anyone and everyone can use it to build data sets. But unfortunately, our lawmakers thought otherwise, and they've made us susceptible to this kind of privacy violation. And that's their call. I don't agree with it. The other is that, in case of OpenAI, they can you can use generative AI analysis in particular to identify and you can analyze vast data sets to identify some kind of vulnerabilities and strategies. And these are not necessarily vulnerabilities and strategies that are, um, like a weakness in an existing system, but they can also be used for creation of social engineering attacks, regarding cyber attacks, regarding infiltrating someone's phone, based on behavior that might be discernible from what you're collecting about them publicly. And I think that so if you think about location data in particular, and I mentioned it before, but there was a data leak many years ago from a fitness app called Strava, and someone took that data and mapped it out uh, on a globe. So you could actually go zoom in on an area and see what routes people were following. And it had hotspots for some of those routes. So what was happening was that it was used to identify, for example, patrolling information in Israel and Kashmir, because someone in the military there was using Strava to count their steps in a sense, right? So that this kind of information, if it's made public, can always be scraped and used and analyzed. It can be used for simulation exercise and mission planning. So I think we needed a better data protection now, but we also need to hold OpenAI accountable here. Again, facial data, like people who've published, let's say, their photos online, all of that can also be scraped and used for target recognition in a sense. It can be used to train, let's say, autonomous reconnaissance systems, which are not necessarily doing harm, but they're collecting more information. So what can India do? So firstly, I think we should amend our data protection law or issue rules to restrict the usage of publicly available personal data for AI for military and especially for military and warfare purposes. But I think we should restrict the usage of publicly available personal data in any case. Secondly, I think we should figure out mechanisms for the usage of foreign AI tools by military and defense personnel, because if they start using these tools, start sharing information, if their location information in particular gets shared, or if they ask a query that can lead to some kind of a vulnerability or disclosure to the system, that's dangerous. Uh, then I think we're already working on this, and I think one must credit the Indian government for putting a focus on developing Indian AI. You've got language so far, but I think more and more large language models need to be developed and more training data needs to be collected so that we can build Indian AI for use by Indians. Again, the other is that I think we need perhaps to summon OpenAI and its executives and subject them to a technical scrutiny with respect to what data they've scraped about Indian citizens, and consider forcing them to delete data of Indian citizens if they've collected it, even if they've collected it from the open web, because our openness can't really be a weakness, right? I know OpenAI said that they don't want this data to be used for harm, but there's a very big difference between wanting something not to be used for harm or trying to restrict its usage for harm. But the data once received can be used for any purpose, right? Every system that has safeguards built in can also be jailbroken. And frankly, that ship has probably sailed, as in AI tools, whether it's OpenAI or otherwise, are going to be used to in the military for defense, for cyber attacks. We need to find ways of protecting scraping of our data above all. I think there's much more to do, much more to think about right now in terms of how to fix this. I don't have a real solution yet, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't look forward.